Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 10 Unedited Minutes with Marlena. It is Tuesday, June 16th, and it's a beautiful day. Today's episode, we have a new episode sponsor, and I have been waiting, excitedly waiting to start this little series with this new episode sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by my amazing dear friend, Rebecca Conklin-Klieboemer. So we are going to spend the next 10 minutes explaining my plan for the next 2 months worth of episodes. And then we're going to love on Rebecca for a little bit. So first of all, my plan for the next 2 episodes is at the beginning of each episode, I'm going to spend just a few minutes reminiscing about our friendship. I have a few surprises in there of things that I'm going to talk about. That little chuckle was not me being ornery, Rebecca, just so you know. But I do have a big surprise coming. I don't want to say what it is, but you'll just have to wait. And some of these memories that I have with Rebecca, hopefully she remembers, because her and I have been friends. I was just thinking about that as I was reminiscing before starting today's episode. I believe we have been friends for over 25 years. And that is a good lead-in to how Rebecca and I met. Excuse me. So back in the day, I worked at the Courier. The Courier was a daily newspaper based in Findlay, Ohio. And Rebecca worked there as well. I don't know what. Hang on a minute. Apparently there's a morning frog in my throat. But anyway, so I worked at the Courier in Findlay. I started working there in 1998, believe it or not. I'm not sure when Rebecca started working there, but I do know that she worked at other newspapers beforehand. I worked in the pre-press department. We called it production. So if I ever refer to it as that, you know what I'm talking about. But back in that day, it was before digital media, like the internet was just starting to take off. And we were still hand pasting up newspaper pages, right? So in order for me in the production department, we would design ads. So we would design an ad on a computer, and then we would print that ad out on a piece of paper, cut that ad out, the little square, run it through a waxer, and stick it onto a piece of a grid sheet. And then after we would get that whole page pasted up, they would call it, the pressman would take it back to a big camera, take a photo of that paper, and be able to print that out on film, take that piece of film, burn it onto a plate, put the plate on the press, and print the newspaper. Okay, there's your newspaper history 101. Anyway, so I worked in production, and Rebecca was and still is a journalist. So she worked over in the newsroom, and I'm not 100% sure what beat Rebecca started on, if she was the crime reporter. I don't think she ever worked in Family, but most of my memories are of Rebecca being the online editor. So as I said, the digital world was just starting to develop, and I think it was around, I'm going to guess, rough guess, 2004, 2005, that the Courier really started to up their game online. And they decided to promote Rebecca as the first ever online editor of the Courier. And that's where a lot of our friendships started to blossom. I remember the first day Rebecca and I met. She probably doesn't, but I do. So the hours that I worked at the Courier, when I first started, was from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And I hated it. I hated those hours because I wanted to work an 8 to 5. I was, in my early 20s, and the dream was to work an 8 to 5, but whatever. So everybody would go home at 5 o'clock, and that last hour for me was dreadful. But I would spend a lot of that time, pasting up ads on the pages. And I remember one day Rebecca wandered over into the production department, and she was looking at the pages that were being pasted up because they were starting to get some news stories on them. So the newsroom would print the stories out on big pieces of RC paper, and then we would cut them out, wax them, and put them on the grid sheets. And so Rebecca was coming over just to look at the pages. And her and I started a conversation. I do not remember what that conversation was about. I just remember her and I having a conversation. And I remember thinking after that conversation, wow, she's a really cool person, and I want to be her friend. And I remember that. And I think that's where our friendship started. That's where our friendship started to blossom. And eventually, Rebecca was given a shift where she worked during the day. So as the online editor, she would work, I don't even know what her hours were, but when she started working days, we called it, her and I really started to be friends because we would work together a lot more. We were there together a lot more. And so the newsroom was on one side of the building of the Courier, and the production department was on the other. But we would share resources, computers, software, because in the photo department, our photo editor would use, he would use a Mac, an Apple computer, to edit his photos and stuff. And that, for some reason, was the only computer that we could install Quark Express onto. So every once in a while, we would get an ad from one of our advertisers that was fully done in Quark Express, and we had to open it up, modify it, and print it out onto RC paper, especially if it was in color. It was a whole process. But anyway, so the photo department was right behind Rebecca's desk, right in the newsroom. So the newsroom, if you envision it as a big square room, Rebecca was kind of sitting in a corner, kind of diagonal, just overlooking the newsroom. And then right behind her was where the photographers would edit their photos and stuff. And so whenever I needed to print an ad out in Quark Express, I would go back there, and, Rebecca and I would chat, have conversations, and just get to know each other. And Rebecca is just an all around amazing person. I'm so glad that we met. I'm so glad we had that first conversation. And I love that woman dearly. We don't see each other that often. She lives about an hour from me, and I think we talk on the phone more than I know we talk on the phone more than we see each other. And we send videos back and forth to each other because we have a lot of the same personality. We grew up with a lot of the same values, and her dad grew up on a farm. She grew up on a farm. We both grew up in agriculture, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful friend to have. And so, so she decided that she loved this podcast, and she wanted to support this podcast, and she wanted to see it continue. So she sponsored 2 months worth of my episodes, and I love her dearly for that. I would have loved her even if she didn't sponsor 2 months worth of my episodes. But we have a lot of memories. We've had a lot of good times. We would go to lunch together a lot, and we would spend time together when she lived closer to me. So that's what we're going to do over the next 2 months, is spend a little bit of time before each episode and just love on Rebecca a little bit, and maybe share some funny stories, some sentimental stories, and yeah. So hopefully, Rebecca, if you're listening to this, which I'm sure you are, hopefully you don't mind some of the deep, dark secrets that we are about to expose. But I need to come up with 60 memories of you and I. And I don't know, that might be a challenge, because the older we get, the fuzzier our memories get. And I think that was a conversation you and I had the other day. But this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited. So tune in every day for the next 60 days to learn a little bit more about Rebecca and I's lovely, beautiful, lifelong friendship. And I can't wait. So that's all for today. I love you all. I love you so much, Rebecca. Thank you so much for sponsoring these episodes. And I cannot wait to dig into this. You guys pray for me. I pray for you every day. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.